good law enables our society to succeed. So I do want to talk a little bit more about the importance of good law. I would call it the rule of law philosophy. That's my words, not yours. That we need healthy discussion more than ever, and law can enable that or disempowerment. And let's just give an example. We think of Bill C-63, the so-called online harms bill. I mean, it's the title is even manipulating an audience. We have lots of laws against online harms. Give us a break. But the real issue, it seems to me, and you've talked about this eloquently before, is it's about controlling and editing, censoring what's on the internet. Is that a fair comment about that bill, Bruce?
Yes. So I would say going back to these two paradigm ideas, or the two frameworks, the ideas that you've expressed about good law, I think are part of and are consistent with the first paradigm. And the problem is that Bill C-63 belongs to the other paradigm.
Exactly. Yes.
Free speech is a paradigm one idea, but proper speech is a paradigm two idea. And we have slid from the one to the other over a course of time. The Supreme Court of Canada, instead of, after all, we have a right in the Charter to freedom of expression.
Mm-hmm.
But according to our Supreme Court over time, your free speech can be justified on utilitarian grounds when it's in the public interest. That's not free speech. And that's allowed us to slide to where we seem to be now, which is that the government sees that it's proper. This is in a country with a guarantee of free speech.
Mm-hmm.
The government thinks it's proper for it to supervise what you say online to make sure you're speaking properly. I mean, that is not free speech. We have completely lost the idea of what free speech is supposed to be. Free speech is not the truth. Free speech is not in the common good. Free speech is not nice. It's none of those things. Free speech is free because that's what you think. And if you are being censored for what you think, then you do not live in a country with free speech.
Right on. So Bill C-63 is a stinker. It's a full frontal attack on freedom of speech, period, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And it does so on several different grounds and different ways. It does so. It has criminal code amendments, but I think that the most problematic one is the amendments that it proposes to make to the Canadian Human Rights Act. Mm-hmm. So it's going to have a chilling effect, and it's going to allow random people to attack what other people have said online at very little cost and subject them to proceedings in front of the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal at their peril. So it is a disaster for the idea of free speech in this country.
It's frightening. It's basically giving a weapon to certain class of activists, whoever they are, to go after their opponents, their ideological opponents, and say, how dare you, and we're going to shut you down and literally kick you out of the public square.
Well, that is correct. And that is consistent, I'm afraid, with what has become of our human rights laws generally. Human rights laws, and this is part of the Canadian Human Rights Act, are going to be, that has become a weapon. It's not just to protect you anymore from discrimination from your government, which is sort of what the idea originally was supposed to be. Now it's a weapon in the hands of certain people to attack other people to make sure that those other people comply with what the first group of people want them to do and how they want them to behave.
Well, it's really quite frightening. So that would be, if there's a new government, certainly at the federal level, this would be one of the very first thing among hundreds of other things to just flush. Is that correct?
I would like to hope so.
Okay, that sounds good to me. I mean, I think it all relates to another interesting case that's emerging, it seems like, that reflects, again, that debate that's going on within the law, relates to the so-called gender ideology. We've all been, I think, quite impressed by the Cass report in the UK, which was a far-reaching examination of gender transition issues in medical care for youth and children in the United Kingdom. Is this an example where you literally have two worldviews colliding with each other, and the law is going to try to figure out where do parents' rights shake out on this, all in the effort to look after their children?
Yes, it is a complex area. the Canada and the United States seem to be behind the curve
Mm,
in
indeed.
the realization that these are terrible practices. Um, I mean, if you think about the law in Canada, right now we have a criminal prohibition on counseling your child
Indeed.
not to transition. I mean, can you imagine that you could be prosecuted criminally from counseling your child that maybe your daughter is not actually a boy?
Hmm.
That's extraordinary.
Isn't
And
it?
and that combined with the premises of, or what have become the premises of the public school systems, which is that essentially, I think that that these are public systems and therefore run by the state, and therefore the state is the one who has the responsibility for teaching and guiding your child, and not you. And the whole, if you like, one of the ways to paint the premise of a public school system is to make the point that it exists because, after all, parents are not able to appropriately educate their children, and therefore it must be the state's job, right? So unless we are able to reverse that premise, then you're going to have trouble, whether it happens to be with respect to gender transition
Hmm.
or lots of other things that are contained within the curriculum and so on. The parents have to take their control of their own children back.
I think you're absolutely right, Bruce. So this is a incredible case study, and the bill C-14, I think that you're referring to, that forbids counseling away from transition, is really quite disturbing. And I think it reflects that Canada and the United States, as you say, are really kind of outliers now in the world, because in Europe, they have adopted, like Sweden and the UK now, so many others, and Finland, really a empowerment of parents
Mm.
to be involved with medical professionals to ensure that that kind of automatic transition is not assumed. These are
Yeah,
complex
yeah.
medical cases demanding the care of psychologists, among many others. So
And we have,
this is almost like an absurd imposition of an assumption that gender transition is always the right answer. It's crazy.
that is exactly correct. There is a now a legally enforced presumption that transition is the proper thing to do.
Oh my! So the tentacles of the state are getting everywhere, Bruce, and so pay attention to this. Even these professional societies, and we see this in poll after poll, where in Canada we've never had a dimmer view of the credibility of our institutions, and I suspect this debate that's going on between these worldviews of the rule of law, you call it more of an old school of law, versus this socialist view of law, is really, again, undermining the credibility of these institutions.
Yes. Well, it's funny because one of the crises that they tend to cite now is just that, is the public's crumbling lack of confidence in institutions,
Ironically.
without making the link to what it is that they've been doing themselves. It's like,
Yeah, they're
no
doing it
kidding,
to
no
themselves.
kidding.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm totally with you, Bruce. It's almost farcical. And so, but to talk about this, to raise the level of awareness that this is all a symptom of deeper fundamental differences of worldviews about our society, I think is so important. And so we've covered a lot of ground today, Bruce, in terms of the debate that's going on within the law. We've even talked about the administrative state. And I guess, I can't help but just, as we get to the end of our far-reaching conversation, talk a little bit about the whole idea, though, that a lot of this is it cynical politics at play, where this kind of different form of law is really about kind of dividing people into groups, as we just talked about. It's kind of political manipulation. I think in the National Post, I read a very interesting editorial saying the current Trudeau government insists that it's somehow a right for Canadians to feel safe. The party has also claimed that hate is everywhere. Around the world, there's been a world where there is hate motivating crimes, and tragically, Canada is no exception. So it's kind of used as a way to manipulate people who are sympathetic to that message that somehow Canada is just riddled with racism. And is that another way to look at the use of the law as a cynical way to just promote political power?
Oh, sure. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. But I think we have to also consider this. In a sense, that's what the whole platform is based on. If
Indeed.
if that was not true, they wouldn't have very much, right? So the framework is based on a certain number of premises, and that is one of them. And if you undermine that premise, if you establish that that premise is not true, then the whole thing starts to come apart. And so I would not expect the political interests who benefit from that set of ideas to change their tune, even if, as I think is the case, those claims are not true.
I think you're spot on, Bruce. And we've come full circle then to the whole idea that perhaps we want a traditional old law, so to speak, that respects individual rights and freedoms rather than a quote new law that is all about building a bigger state that undermines your freedom and disempowers you.
Amen.
Okay, well, look, I want to thank you so much, Bruce, for joining us for this far-reaching conversation. And I want to thank you for your courage and your leadership to talk about these issues so that we as Canadians can do our part to speak up for the law and good law at that.
Oh, it's been an honor and a pleasure, David. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Bruce.
Without open discussion and debate, you're not thinking, nor are you free. Comment below. We'd love for you to join the conversation.